Did you know that 70,000 years ago there were at least 6 different human species living on Earth at the same time? Among them, the Neanderthals had larger physiques, stronger muscles, and even larger brains than we do. They survived and dominated Europe for 300,000 years. Yet, why is it that today, no matter what corner of the planet you go to, we are the only species left? The secret behind this brutal war for survival does not lie in physical strength, but in an invisible yet incredibly terrifying weapon. Does the world we live in, the things we passionately pursue every day, truly exist, or is it all just a spectacular historical hoax? Let's watch until the end of this video to unravel this shocking mystery, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the Raw Fact Teller channel to give us the motivation to release more meaningful content. This was a war of extinction, and the victors were your ancestors and mine, the Homo sapiens. On what grounds did we win? The complete answer lies in the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Author Yuval Noah Harari used a phrase, imagined reality. This phrase explains how humanity, from trembling prey on the African savanna, wiped out all competitors and climbed to the top of the food chain in just a few tens of thousands of years. It gets even more chilling when, at the end of the book, Harari throws out a question. When we have the ability to edit our own code of life, how much longer will this species called human exist? After watching the following content, you will have to rethink the entire history of human civilization, as well as thoroughly understand the fictional nature of wealth, power, and social class. Humans weren't born as the masters of the earth. For a very long time, our ancestors couldn't even fight for a single bone. 2.5 million years ago, the first humans appeared on the East African savanna. Back then, our ancestors' physiques couldn't match chimpanzees, they couldn't run as fast as antelopes, and their strength was no match for lions. The only thing they could be proud of was a slightly larger than average brain. But this brain was a money-burning machine. It only makes up 2 to 3% of body weight, but consumes up to 25% of our energy. This meant that our ancestors had to spend more time foraging for food while simultaneously cutting back on the development of other organs. The most direct price paid was the degeneration of muscles. You can go to the zoo and watch a chimpanzee. It can throw a grown adult away like a rag doll with just one hand. Our ancestors, however, chose to trade physical strength for brains. This price was extremely devastating. For 2 million years, humans were nothing more than obscure supporting actors in the ecosystem. When studying the living traces of prehistoric humans, archaeologists discovered a heartbreaking detail. Next to the fossilized bones of early hominids, there were often half-eaten bones left behind by other carnivores. This proves that our ancestors were not hunters. We were the ones who had to wait for the lions to get full and the hyenas to leave before daring to sneak over, using rocks to smash the bones to suck out a little marrow inside. Bone marrow was the leftover food that other predators couldn't reach. That was humanity's initial position in the food chain. Not the hunter, but the scavenger. So how did a species barely surviving on leftover bones unexpectedly rise to the top of the food chain in just a few short tens of thousands of years, sending all other human species to the grave of history? The answer lies in a genetic mutation that occurred 70,000 years ago, something Harari calls the cognitive revolution. No one knows the exact cause. It could have been a random genetic mutation or some kind of virus that changed the brain's structure. In short, 70,000 years ago, the brain of Sapiens suddenly unlocked. We learned a completely new ability, storytelling. You might say, what's so great about storytelling? Monkeys can communicate, and bees can transmit information too. The core difference here is that the stories we tell can be about things that don't even exist in the first place. A monkey can warn its peers to watch out for a lion, but only humans can utter the sentence, "The lion is the guardian deity of our tribe. If we dance under the full moon, the lion god will bless us." Is this statement true? Of course not. But the magical thing is, when 100 people all believe in that statement, they can form cooperation around a fiction. And a group of people with the same faith in the lion god can easily defeat a troop of monkeys who only know how to fight over every single banana. This is humanity's superpower, using fictional stories to bind a massive number of strangers together to create large-scale cooperation. Think about it. If 2 chimpanzees want to cooperate, they must know and trust each other. The maximum limit of their social group is only about 150 individuals. Any more than that, and it's instant chaos. But we are different. 2 people who have never met, as long as they both believe in the same God, revere the same flag, and use the same currency, can instantly establish trust. 100,000 people can die for the same religion. 1 million people can pay taxes to the same country. 7 billion people around the world can accept the value of the same piece of green printed paper. These things all share one common characteristic. They do not exist in the physical world. Nations are fiction, companies are fiction, human rights are fiction, and money is also a fiction. But it is exactly believing together in these fictions that has allowed us to cooperate on a scale that no other living creature would dare to imagine. Neanderthals had larger brains than us, stronger physiques than us, but their tribes had at most only a few dozen people. When 100 Sapiens holding long spears appeared in front of them, numbers became the crushing advantage over everything else. The cognitive revolution did not make humans physically stronger, but it made humans better at deceiving. Harari says that every leap in human history was not based on the truth, but on a more effective lie. But the next question is what truly cuts to the heart. If we are so good at cooperating, if we have become the masters of the earth, then why aren't humans any happier? Harari gives an extremely devastating answer. The agricultural revolution is history's biggest fraud. It might sound harsh, but think about it. 10,000 years ago, humans began domesticating wheat, rice, and corn. Textbooks tell you this is the starting point of civilization, a symbol of progress. But the author asks the opposite. In the end, did humans domesticate wheat, or did wheat domesticate humans? Look, people in the hunter-gatherer era only worked 3 to 4 hours a day. Their food sources were diverse, their nutrition balanced, they studied the stars, tracked animals, and understood the habits of hundreds of types of plants. And what about the farmers in the agricultural era? Every day they had to bend their backs working for a dozen hours, eating only 1 or 2 types of crops, with a poor nutritional structure. Archaeological evidence shows that the first farmers were distinctly 10 centimeters shorter and had shorter lifespans than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. So why did humans still have to farm? The answer is cruel. Once you start, you can never stop. Hunter-gatherer societies had sparse populations. Each person needed a vast territory to forage for food. But farming could help the same area of land feed 10 times the number of people. The problem is, population growth would eat up all the surplus food. So you are forced to clear more land, plant more crops, have more children, and thus repeat the cycle. A few generations later, no one remembers the freedom of the foraging era anymore. Everyone is tied to the land, year after year, diligently sowing seeds, fertilizing, and harvesting. 10,000 years ago, wheat was just an unremarkable weed in the Middle East. Today, it covers 2,250,000 square kilometers of land on Earth. From the perspective of wheat, it used human greed to accomplish the global expansion of its own genetic code. At this point, I want to pause for a moment to relate this to reality, because the logic of that agricultural revolution has never disappeared. It has merely put on a shinier suit of digital armor. Do you find the story of wheat very familiar? From the personal perspective of someone who has dedicated a full 15 years to the hard work of content creation, building a series of social media platforms and online community pages, I once complacently thought I was mastering technology. I thought I was controlling digital marketing tools, using engaging content to lure the algorithm into serving the purpose of growing my channel. But what is the truth? Recent statistics indicate that an adult in Vietnam spends an average of 6 to 7 hours a day glued to their phone screen. I myself also have days where I sit motionless in front of the computer for 12 to 14 hours just to analyze whether the engagement chart is going up or down, trying to squeeze out the catchiest scripts. In the end, I realized I haven't domesticated the platforms at all. It is the platforms, the lifeless lines of algorithmic code, that have domesticated me. It dictates what time I go to sleep, the content I have to think about, and it even dominates my emotions of joy and sadness based on likes and shares. We think we chose a trendy job, but in reality, the workload is tying us down. We think we own a smartphone, but in reality, the phone is holding our minds captive. So if humans are that easy to trap, what does civilization rely on to maintain its operation? The answer is the 2 most successful fictional stories in history: money and empires. The banknote you are holding in your hand is essentially just a piece of paper. It cannot be eaten, it cannot be worn. The only reason you are willing to exchange your sweat and hard work for it is because you believe others will also accept it. Money is the greatest trust-building mechanism humanity has ever invented. 2 completely unfamiliar strangers, as long as they face a common payment system, can instantly complete a transaction. Today, almost everyone on Earth believes in money. This is the only true global consensus in human history. But currency itself is neutral. It needs a much more massive container machine to operate, and that machine is called an empire. The nature of an empire is to use violence to unify the rules, and then use culture to assimilate the differences. The British Empire conquered a quarter of the globe's landmass, then used the English language, common law, and free trade to mold the world into a single block. Today, the tomato you eat comes from the Americas, the cup of tea you drink comes from China, the numerals you use come from the Middle East. The reason these things can circulate globally is exactly because empires broke down border barriers. Today's system of globalization doesn't need to station troops right at your doorstep. It only needs you to believe in its rules and rely on its network. Money and power, from the past to the present, have always been two sides of the same coin. But what should alarm us the most is not the history of money and empires, but when algorithms start to understand you better than you understand yourself. Are you still a player in this game of chess, or have you become a pawn manipulated by others? Harari says humans are not some sacred soul. We are merely a collection of biochemical algorithms. You think you have free will, but in fact, you are just reacting to stimuli. You like eating sweets because, in ancient times, sugar meant energy. The brain evolved an algorithm that eating sugar equals happiness. You fear loneliness because an individual abandoned by the herd wouldn't survive more than 3 days on the savannah. You pursue status because high status means more chances of survival. You think you are making choices, but in reality, lines of code written millions of years ago are making choices for you. Today, you open a shopping app, and the algorithm knows exactly what you want to buy better than you do yourself. You scroll through short videos, and the algorithm knows exactly what can make your happiness hormones spike. You use a map to drive, and the algorithm decides which route you should take. We are increasingly handing over more decision-making power to machines. But the problem is, when algorithms make all the important decisions for us, what is left of us? 500 years before the Common Era, humanity began to ask what the gods were. In the year 1500, humanity began to ask what nature was. And now, algorithms are forcing us to answer the final question: what is a human? In the next few decades, humanity may, for the first time, possess the ability to redesign itself. Gene editing, artificial intelligence, the fusion between human and machine. Our species is perhaps standing at its final crossroads. After reading Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, I sank into a deep silence for a long time. The cruelest point of the book is not telling you the historical truth, but forcing you to realize that the things you have always believed in, like nations, companies, money, and freedom, not a single one of them is the truth. They are all fictions. But it is exactly those fictions that have helped 7 billion strangers cooperate together in the same game. Fiction is not deception. Fiction is the foundation of civilization. In conclusion, the most profound lesson here is a wake-up call for our very own reality. It turns out that modern humans are still living in a matrix woven from fictional stories. The way to apply this lesson to life is to learn to be mindful. Do not let yourself get swept into the blind whirlwind of virtual values defined by others. Occasionally, take a step back to ask yourself whether draining your energy for this job or keeping your head down to buy that item is because you truly need it, or because algorithms and the fictional standards of society are manipulating you. Clearly recognizing the boundary between reality and fiction will help you focus on the core values that bring true happiness, such as health and family. What do you think about this? In your opinion, what is domesticating and controlling humans the most in today's modern life? Is it social media, money, or the invisible pressures from work? Please politely leave a comment below to answer and share your perspective so everyone can reference each other's opinions. Finally, if you feel this content has given you fresh perspectives, please take a second to hit subscribe to support the Raw Fact Teller channel, giving us more motivation to create the next engaging videos. Goodbye and see you next time.